Hare Krishna. So I'm very happy to be here with all of you. And I would like to express my gratitude to the temple management and the devotees of ISKCON Cincinnati for arranging this program today on a weekday, Friday. Thank you very much. Today is a day of festivity according to the Vaishnava calendar. The Vaishnava calendar is called as Vaishnava Panchang. So it specifically helps us, the Panchang helps us understand what is the significance of any day of the year in the lives of practicing devotees. As humans, we have 24 hours a day. And if we accept the arithmetic or the math of how one spends a routine day in the human form of life given by Prahlada Maharaj, it is very interesting. According to Prahlada Maharaj, he actually gives the breakup of a normal lifespan of a human being. And then we take cue from it and then we try to apply it to the daily format of a human being on this planet. So he gave the format, he gave the breakup for an entire duration of 100 years. He said that if a human being lives for 100 years, then half of that the human being spends in sleep, or he spends in activities related to sleep. And of the remaining half, where one is awake, one spends almost 1/5 of that through one's childhood and boyhood, or you can call it girlhood, whichever suits. So the first 10 years of one's growing up as a child, 1 to 10 years. So 1/5 of 50 years of wakefulness goes in childhood. Another 1/5 goes in old age. So out of a human span of 100 years, now we have 30 productive years left. So of the 30 years, one spends 20 years trying to make money, trying to achieve some goals or fulfill some aspirations as a young adult or in adult life. And that leaves only 10 years. 10 years are, so out of 100 years, practically we have only 10 years left out for anything else other than what the body forces us to do. Of those 10 years, some part is spent in trying to enjoy. So let us say we have just 10 productive years. We wouldn't go into much more analysis. So 1/10 of the human form of life is only available by design, by just its arrangement, by being in the human species, 1/10 of the life is practically available for cultivation of spirituality, for some spiritual practices. So practically 1/10 of the day is all that we have. So the Panchang helps us understand how do we use every day so that we can try to have a spiritual outlook throughout the day. We can try being practicing yogi for the day. So it gives us various occasions. The calendar gives us or offers us various occasions. We are fortunate that we have a very ancient history. As Vaishnavas, our history begins from the ancient of all personalities, the most ancient of all personalities like Brahma. Now, not all the personalities who have been mentioned in the scriptures are remembered through the year, not all of them. But there are particular days during the year that we remember certain events that have happened in our history and certain personalities that are associated with the history to find motivation, inspiration, to seek lessons, to get connected to a rich pool of spiritual personalities, to get connected to all of them. So today is the 10th day of the waxing moon. So in the Panchang, this is called as Shukla Dashmi. 10th day is called as Dashmi. And since it is this Dashmi, this phase, waxing phase of the moon, comes in the month of Ashwin, when on the first day of the new moon or the first day of the full moon, after the new moon or the full moon, sorry, the day after the full moon or the new moon, whichever is the star, the nakshatra that dawns or is on the horizon at sunrise, that star gives its name to the entire month. So there is one nakshatra called as the Ashwini nakshatra. And since this is the rising star, when the present month began, the first day of the present month, since our month is Amasyanta, it begins after Amavasya, Purnimanta, which it begins after Purnima. Therefore, the first day of the full moon, the first day after the full moon, that is Pratipad, is the beginning of the month. Now we are coming towards the end of the month. So the first would be after the full moon, we have the waning phase. After the full moon night, we have the waning phase of the moon. That is called as Krishna Paksha. First, in our calendar, we have Krishna Paksha and then Shukla Paksha, the waning phase and the waxing phase. The waning phase has just been celebrated. Most of us may not remember it, but if we may not have paid particular attention to it, the waning phase of this month. However, this was the time of the year when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited Gaya. He had gone to Gaya, the holy place called as Gaya in North India, because he wanted to offer respects to his ancestors. So for those who are followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as we are known as Gaudiya Vaishnavas. We are followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We remember Lord Chaitanya visiting Gaya as a young scholar, and he had many programs there. And when he came back, returned back to Navadvip, Bengal, he was a changed personality. So that event has already been remembered by the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now we are in the waxing phase of the moon, the Shukla Paksha. So 10 days have passed after the new moon night, Amavasya. So the moon is now increasing in size. Ashwin Dashmi, since I said this month began when the Ashwini Nakshatra, the rising star, was Ashwini. So this is the month of Ashwin. The next would be in 6 days, the rising star would be, the new month would begin, and the rising star would be Kritika. Hence the month is called as Kartik. In the Gaudiya Panchanga, we call this month, the next month, as Damodar, and this present month as Padmanabh. The month of Padmanabh. The next month will be called the month of Damodar. So that is why we already have Lord Damodar's picture here. Maybe it's always there, but we'll be worshipping Lord Damodar's picture here, right? At the back, for the whole of the next month, the month of Damodar. So the first 9 days of the Shukla Paksha, Ashwin Shukla Paksha, is celebrated as the day of the days where we worship the energy of the Lord. So these 9 days are dedicated to remembering and worshipping the energy of the Lord. They are called as Navaratra. So there are 2 big Navaratras celebrations in the entire year. One is the Ashwin Navaratra and the other is the Chaitra Navaratra. The Ashwin Navaratra ends after 9 days, and the 10th day is celebrated as Vijayadashmi. Yes? And the Chaitra Navaratra ends with Ram Navami. Somehow both are connected to Lord Ramachandra. And we worship Lord Ramachandra. Now, growing up in India, Vijayadashmi was the day when children would get a lot of sweets at school. If you went to a nationalist school, they would distribute sweets. And in the evening, we would go to the Mela, carnival. I am not really sure that's a good word for Mela. A fair, a carnival fair, and a huge effigy of a 10-headed personality would be waiting for everyone to be seen being burned to the ground. Huge effigy of a 10-faced personality, a 10-headed personality. This 10-headed personality is Dashagriv. Dashagriv means he had 10 heads, so obviously, and all of them were functional. None of them were dysfunctional. Single torso, 10 heads. Just imagine 10 functional heads in sync with each other. It is like having 10 processors. Each processor handling different data. No wonder he was the master of the four Vedas, the master of the Puranas. He knew all the scriptures. Not only that, he was so good at art and culture. He was a very good at music. You see, you need a lot of one should be having a lot of creative ability to do good in music and art. He has 10 heads that are very creative. So when he would play music, especially the drums, the most focused of all personalities in the Vedic scriptures, who's Lord Shiva, he would be moved. Lord Shiva is immovable. Just as the Himalayas, which is his residence, is immovable, Lord Shiva is immovable. But when Dashagriv would play would play drums and multiple drums at the same time, Lord Shiva would be would get so involved with the music, he would begin dancing. So he was blessed in one sense because he had such abilities. Unfortunately, sometimes when one has abilities, one becomes very egoistic. And Dashagriv became very egoistic. And when one has a lot of ego, the ego only becomes satisfied when we see somebody else surrendering to us. And in our attempt to make them surrender unto us, we bring them to the point of extreme pain and they cry in anguish. This is the nature of ego. Sometimes people think ego is just pride. You would kind of just want to show off. The dark side of ego is that ego is satisfied only when everyone else surrenders unto us. And we don't want just peaceful surrender. We want to see them crying in anguish and pain. That we are helpless without your shelter. That is what ego demands. So that was Dashagriv. So because he would make so many people cry in pain and anguish, he got the name Ravan. Ravan means one who is perfectly equipped to make others cry out in pain. So one day Dashagriv was called for a convocation ceremony and they gave him this certificate. Certificate of appreciation. You make everyone cry. And Ravan, he embellished it with so many jewels around that certificate and he framed it and he put it in his private gallery for everyone to come and see. I can make everyone cry. And believe it or not, people actually paid to see that certificate and they were inspired. There were hordes and hordes of people who were inspired to follow in the footsteps of Sri Ravanji. Those who were a little sane, had some sanity, they prayed to Lord Vishnu. That, my dear Lord, if this person and his followers, they are creating so much misery in this world, you must have already thought out a plan to mitigate all the miseries, the pain, the sufferings of all the living entities. So please let your plan be put into action. And the request of the demigods inspired the advent and the prayers of all the saintly personalities. It impelled the Supreme Lord to appear as the son of Mother Kaushalya. Kaushalya Suprabharama. He appeared. Just as the sun rises over the eastern horizon in full glory, so he appeared from the womb of Mother Kaushalya. Whose glory is remembered even to this day. This is the Lord's mother. Anyways, when one becomes very proud, it's difficult to pay attention to what you're doing. It's like, when you have your nose high up in the air, you cannot notice the steps that you're taking. So Ravana was like always very proud with his nose in the air. So he stumbled. And what was his stumbling block? He kidnapped Sita, who is the Lord's energy. She is non-different from Lord Ram. She is the potency of the Lord and his wife. He kidnapped her. The funny thing is, Ravan was forced to kidnap her through deceit. In a deceitful way, he kidnapped her. He wanted to capture her by different means, but his advisors, they told him that we just want to let you know that a few months ago, 14,000 soldiers under the command of 3 of our most powerful warriors, they were destroyed by him single-handedly in 1 hour. So you might want to consider how you would approach this situation. So that is how he took the shelter of deceit, and he captured Sita, and he took her away to his kingdom Lanka. Through great efforts of the community of Vanaras and Rikshas, a very warrior clan, a clan of warriors whose features appeared to be kind of human. So they are called as Vanaras. Unfortunately, the modern day depictions of Vanaras are like they are monkeys. Can you imagine a monkey doing weights? A monkey jumping across huge distances? Monkeys doing that. Now, typically, Hanumanji is the icon of people who want to have good physique. How can one think that he's a monkey? Doesn't make sense. The Ramayana calls them Kinnaras and Kimpurushas. They are kind of human-like. They behave like humans. However, their features are not completely human, so they could be called as humanoids. However, calling them as monkeys and bears is like really very disrespectful. Unfortunately, we need to convey the understanding, and hence we say monkeys and bears. Riksha are called as Kimpurushas, human-like. So with their help, Lord Ramachandra crossed the ocean, and there was a fight. And finally, on the 10th day of the month of Ashwin Shukla Paksha, Ravana's heart was pierced by the celebrated arrow of Lord Ramachandra, and he lost his life. And the war came to an end. So that day is celebrated as the day of victory of Lord Ramachandra over Ravan. It is called as Shri Vijayadashmi, the day of victory, which is the 10th day of the month of Ashwin. But now it has just boiled down to bows and arrows, a few children putting on the get-up of monkeys, and there is one child dressed up as Ram, the other child is dressed up as Lakshman, and they're brought in a procession to the, this is in India, they're brought to in a procession to this fair, and right in the center of this huge ground is this huge effigy. It's like practically anywhere from 40 to 80 feet high, and an arrow is sent along a thread. Basically, there's a thread, guided thread, that takes the arrow from the bow of these young children, and it goes to that effigy, and there are firecrackers, and everyone claps their hands, and the effigy of Ravana is burnt, and then everyone goes back to watching TV. Ravana is done, so now let us go back and eat and drink and be merry. What is Vijayadashmi? It is a day when we remember Lord Ramachandra, not just his victory, not just being happy and wanting to celebrate. We remember Lord Ramachandra. And this is the day, today specifically, you'd like to remember the services of, so there are so many devotees in the Ramayana or in the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra that really get overlooked. You kind of miss them. And it's all right. There's nothing wrong. We can always have our picks. We can always have our heroes. However, it's helpful if we can hear about these incidences, these small prasangas or incidents from the Sri Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana. So Lord Ramachandra is looking for Sita, and he comes to a specific place where there is a beautiful lake with a lot of lotuses in it. He asks the forest dwellers, "What is this lake?" And they inform him that this lake is Pampa Sarovar. Actually, they were looking for Pampa Sarovar because they had been told by a personality that they should go to Pampa Sarovar and meet up with Sugriv. So they were happy they were at Pampa Sarovar. This place also was a safe haven, a safe community for many saints, rishis, munis. They saw him come. Lord Ramachandra was very happy to see all of these rishis, munis. However, internally, his eyes were kind of, they had a wanton look in his eye. He had a wanton look in his eyes. He was looking out for someone, something. When the news of the Lord's arrival along with Lakshman, Sri Lakshman, spread in the community, now this being forest land, there were ups and downs. So On a small hillock was a little hut, and a very old lady, she came at the door of that hut. And when she saw the Lord, with her old eyes, she looked with her eyes full of devotion. She looked with so much love at the Lord that the Lord was attracted, and his gaze was completely fixed on her. She came down and she welcomed the Lord to her hut. She washed the feet of the Lord. Old, frail lady. And she welcomed the Lord with whatever little facility she had, being herself a hermit, an ascetic, being very old. She did her best. Her eyes were constantly flowing with tears. And she was trying to stop the tears flowing from her eyes, but she couldn't. It was an impossible task for her. Lord Ram was so overwhelmed by her affection that he couldn't speak. The lady, she welcomed the Lord and gave him a seat after washing his feet and offering him a little bit of fresh air. She got a fan made of twigs and leaves, and she was fanning the Lord. She gave him a seat. And being an ascetic and a forest dweller, the etiquette is that whenever they have any travelers visiting them, they offer them food and water, because in the forest, you're not sure when you'll get your next meal and where you'll get water. So she, out of etiquette, she realized that she has to offer her guests some food and water. But more than the etiquette, it was her life savings in one sense. And we will explain how it was her life's savings. She brought to the Lord a leaf cup filled with berries. Patram pushpam phalam toyam. And in another leaf cup, she got some water for the Lord. So berries and water. Now today we get berries from Walmart. Blackberries, blueberries, strawberries, other kinds, raspberries. She had the forest berries. If Lord Ramachandra had come in the present times and Shabri had been living in the present times, she would have gone to Walmart most probably to get her berries. And she could have given an assortment of berries to the Lord. But these are berries from the forest. She offered them to the Lord. She said, I'm Shabri. And by the blessings of my Guru, I have been living here since I was a child. And every day I was waiting for your lotus feet to come to my little hut. Very briefly, there are other references of who this lady is. Due to circumstances, this lady was born as a girl child amongst the tribals, the people of the forest. Since the people of the forest had very less exposure to education, and therefore any kind of status, position, or facilities, modern day, or let us say city, urban facilities, they are very unsophisticated in their dealings. And because when people from rural areas who do not understand the sophistication of city or urban areas come to the city, they are bewildered. So when they're bewildered, we call them, the so-called urbanites, we call them bums. What do we call them? Bums, village bums. Because we feel that we are sophisticated, educated, cultured, so on and so forth. We know our laws, which side of the road to drive on, how to open the door for someone else and say, please, you first, thank you. Maybe they don't use similar language. They have not been educated in that. They have their own culture. They have their own way of interacting with each other. And these were the times of the past. So there are various ways these tribal communities are addressed by, and all of this, the urban areas would consider them to be unsophisticated people, unsophisticated tribes. They wouldn't call them bums, but the equivalent of bums was calling them as nishads, calling them as shabaras. So she belonged to a tribe of shabaras. Therefore, she was called a shabari. It is calling someone who comes from Moscow as Moscowite. Someone from Italy as Italian. Someone from the native tribes here in North America as a native Indian. Many people who know the Ramayana think that Shabari is her name. She was called by her caste. That is all we know about her. We don't know what her name is. Can you imagine? Being referred to in a great scripture like the Ramayana and not having your name in it, just your SSN number. How would that feel? That is Shabari. And how did the law, does the law have, is he a part of the Social Security Administration? How does he know her SSN number? That is Krishna. He doesn't know us by our designations as much as he knows us by our qualifications. That is the Supreme Lord. We may have our designations in this material world. The Lord may respect that. At the same time, he is touched by our qualities. And if we have designations or if we have no designations, the qualities that we have is what is attractive to Krishna. Shat karmo nipuno vipro mantra tantra visharada. Vaishnavo guru nat syat. Vaishnava swapacha guru. A person may not be very sophisticated and learned in the ways of life in this world. And there may be another person who knows the A to Z of what is called as a cultured way of living. However, such a cultured person, if does not understand the science of Krishna consciousness, will never be able to connect to the hearts of those who are searching out for Krishna. They'll never make that connection. However, one who is immersed in the science of Krishna and may appear externally to be completely unaware of the way of dealing in this material world, how to deal, what is the cultured way of dealing with each other, may be totally unaware of it. But that person, according to scriptures, is the only person that can connect with the hearts of those who are seeking Krishna. Hence, as seekers, we should be eager to make connection with those who have their hearts or those who are immersed in the science of Krishna. And what is the science of Krishna? The science of Krishna is very simple. Patram, pushpam, phalam, toyam, yo me bhaktya prayachiti, tadaham bhaktya ashnami prayatatmanaha. You can offer me the best of the dishes in this entire material creation and I could still be hungry and ask for more. However, a simple leaf or fruit, flower, or a few drops of water offered with sincere devotion satisfies me. In fact, Krishna says that even after I've had a full meal and my stomach is like full, I'm filled up to the neck, a leaf offered with devotion, sincere devotion, makes me hungry again. That is my appetizer, my digestive. This is a science of Krishna. So she was born in a community that would typically find it very difficult to be taught the ways of this world, where we learn to worship Krishna through, or we learn to worship the Supreme Lord through rites and rituals. She would find it very difficult. And she did find it very difficult. At one point of time, seeing the kind of renunciation that she had at, when she was in her pre-teens, in her tweens, her parents thought that, oh, she's becoming too much involved with ISKCON of those days. With a spiritual movement, with spiritual inclinations. They said, get her married. Time-tested formula. Because as soon as you get married, you need at least 3 to 4 credit cards. And then more. You need to become a member of Costco's or Sam's Club. And then you have to keep on looking out for deals. Off-season or on-season deals. And, oh, we did not see you yesterday for the Aarti. Prabhu, I was at Costco's. There was a very good deal. This is how it is. I was in the Himalayas and I was traveling in the Himalayas long, long ago. I have a few Himalayan stories from the Himalayas. So I met a mendicant, long hair, matted hair, the kind of mendicants that they are called as aghoris in India. He comes into a shop, sits down for, this is like a hotel, a small restaurant. He sits down and he says, I'm thirsty. So they have what is it? Fizz drink, a soft drink, like with a little soda in it. In India, we used to call it thumbs up. This was from like 20 years ago, I guess. So the owner of the hotel offers that to him free. In India, people do that. They offer it to mendicants free. So he takes the drink and pours it into a skull. He had gotten a skull from the graveyard. He would always move. These are aghoris. And he actually drank off the skull or from the skull. He put that drink, and I saw him do that. And I'm like, I'm thankful that, I was inspired to become a member of ISKCON. At least Not that I think it to be something weird. I wasn't weirded out by that mendicant doing it. It's just that I realized that it would be so difficult for me to do that. Looking at a skull at night, I would have skull dreams. And then, yeah, and a soft drink in it. But he could do it, and all glories to him. Anyways, mendicants. But married life is different. Married life, you have to have things sorted out. You cannot be weird. Sorted out. So get her married. That was what they decided. And since she was from the tribal community, as the wedding feast, her father had captured many animals and birds, and he was going to slaughter them and offer them as a wedding feast. The little girl asked her mother, who was trying to prepare her for the wedding, give her the wedding ceremonial bath and add fragrant air, fragrant oil to her hair, things like that. She asked her mother, why are you preparing me up like this? And why are all those animals, why have they been captured? She said, oh, little girl, they are for your wedding feast. She was so shocked. She immediately ran away from home, and on the way out, she opened the door to that go down and let all the animals and birds escape, and she escaped too. And as she was escaping, along with the animals and birds, they blessed her. They said, just as you have liberated us, we pray that you also get liberation. Can you imagine? It is so good to have blessings from all kind of living entities, and not just few people that we consider to be our jackpots. Premium members of the Blessing Club. Get in touch with them. Please, can you give us a blessing? And we have to wait in line to receive the blessings. It is so wonderful if we can receive blessings from all kinds of living entities, because it creates a positive vibe in the atmosphere. Can you imagine? All living entities, different kinds of living entities, according to the way they understand the world, they can communicate. They offer us blessings, positive vibrations. We don't need any Reiki treatment after that. She got the blessings. She ran away. But where should she go? Now, in the city, we get lost. Those who have lived in the forest, they never get lost. Because they have so many ways, so many directions in which they can head and still feel safe. So she just ran off in a particular direction deep into the forest, and she came to Pampa Sarovar, a lake known as Pampa. Sarovar means lake. Saras, that is a word from which Sarovar comes. That which is full of nectar. Water is nectar. And a pure lake, a cool lake, a clean lake is Saras. So Sarovar, a Saras that gives us Vardhan. It is a boon. Sarovar. So Pampa Sarovar. Now you call it a lake, you lose all the other meanings that is attached to it. You call it a Sarovar, there's so much you can imbibe from it. So Pampa Sarovar, she comes there and she looks at all these mendicants and she feels so happy. She has no idea. She doesn't really understand. She's just a tween, right? She's just like 11 at the most. 11-year-old girl from a tribal community, she comes to a hermitage, sees so many saints. What makes her happy is the vibration of that place. She feels safe, she feels secure. It was as if her system was, exposed to Trojans, and now she has Norton security or McAfee. Many people have no idea how it works, but as soon as they see that symbol, McAfee, they're like, yeah, I feel safe and secure. So she felt safe, secure. And then she looked around and she saw only males. And she's coming from a community where there's a particular understanding of how males and females interact. There's distinctions. There is division. She sees around, she sees only males. She feels a little, she has some kind of concern. Being a forest dweller, she knows how to hide, so she hides. And at night, she comes back to the ashram, feeling safe. Why does she come back? As she's in hiding throughout the day, she's wondering, what should she do? And in this situation, she prays to the Supreme Lord, or the idea of who she thought was the Supreme Lord. Her prayer is so pure, so innocent, and it is so intense that within her heart, she hears a voice. Serve these people. Somehow she, call it her intuition. When we say a voice within the heart, within the mind, intuition. She has that intuition. So at night she comes back and she cleans the ashram. She brooms it. She sprinkles cold water so that the dust would settle. Then she gets fruits and berries from the forest and keeps them at strategic places around their huts. She collects firewood for sacrifices of Samhita. And then she disappears before sunrise. The next day, everyone is surprised. Did the Devatas come? Is it some divine intervention? What has happened? But they are sages, so they realize that that shouldn't be the answer. It must be a person who has done this incognito. So then they go back to the servers to try and find out if there are any footprints have been left. They try to inquire, understand. They get no understanding. So at night they have guards on duty. And she knows how to avoid guards and perform her service. But one night she gets caught by some young practicing renunciates, ascetics of the hermitage, young hermits. Who are you? She's so shocked. She's a little girl. She's not able to answer. So they say, all right, we should bring her to the leader of our hermitage. His name is Matanga Rishi. He's an old man, an old hermit. He looks at the little girl. He asks her very kindly, are you the one who's been doing all the services here? The little girl, she casts her, or she puts her eyes down in shyness and gently nods her head. Seeing or understanding the quality of the service that she had rendered, the old sage is moved. He says, what can I do for you, child? Please tell me. Now, since he is very old and he's so gentle, she feels comfortable. This is a nice case study of those who want to deal with troubled minds. Like a psychiatric session where she is on the lounge and the doctor is telling her, relax, I'm here to help you. She feels very safe. and she explains who she is, tells her story. Matanga Rishi says, you can stay here. Without any fear, you can live in this ashram, in this hermitage. And he tells everyone else, she is a member of this ashram. So she is the only person who gets membership as a girl. She is the only girl, female member of that ashram. And everyone is happy. No one objects. Because they know that the old sage is trustworthy. We can trust his words. He is not just a leader, he is a teacher too. So she lives with the old sage, and the old she asks him, what service can I do? He says that, please don't try to serve everyone in this ashram. Everyone has their duties. What you can do is, your residence, you can stay there and you can keep it clean, and whatever service is offered to you within the ashram, in the hermitage, do that and chant the holy names of the Lord. She immediately accepts that. Within a few months, like maybe a couple of months, 1 or 2 months, the old sage is about to leave his body. She's just 11, 12. She has taken shelter. She feels happy for the first time in her life. And now the old sage is leaving. The old sage calls her along with all of his other disciples, and he tells her that I won't be here after some time. She asks him why. He says that this is the nature of the world. I'm old and I have to leave. He doesn't say that I have to die and things like that. He says I have to leave. So she says, then who will take care of me? What should I do? He says, the one who has taken care of you up till now is the very person who will care for you throughout your life. Who is that? He says, the Supreme Lord. And what is my service for the rest of my life? The old sage says, you should serve the Supreme Lord. So she says, where should I go to serve the Supreme Lord? He says, you should not go anywhere. He'll come to you. She says, okay. And then the next morning, the sage gives up his body, goes back to the spiritual world, Matanga Rishi. And after all the rituals are done, she suddenly realizes that I haven't asked him an important question. When is he going to come? And now she cannot get an answer. So she understands in her own way, she accepts this understanding that the Lord will arrive the next day. And she prepared for the Lord's arrival. The whole day, she was preparing herself for the Lord's arrival. And as the sun set, he hadn't come. She did not lose her enthusiasm. She did that the next day too. She prepared herself and she prepared her hut for the Lord's arrival. This happened every day for the rest of the year for the next 70 years. For 70 years, every single day, she would go to the forest, collect berries, bring it to her hut, broom her hut, broom the outside of the courtyard of the hut. She would sprinkle water on it. She would sit down, chant the holy names. She would again get up, broom, and stand at the doorstep of her hut and look out into the distance, waiting for the Lord to come. 70 years. Can you imagine 70 years waiting, 70 years for initiation? every single day thinking that today is the day of initiation. And at the end of the day, not being discouraged that the ceremony did not happen. I'm sorry. I can say that because most probably I'm initiated and some of you are not. So I'm on the other side. You're like, yeah, Prabhu. Most of you could be like, you can say that because you don't have to wait. We have to wait. You are already full. We are still hungry. So you can speak nicely about, yeah, you should not worry about hunger as much. I'm just saying, look at the quality of these great personalities. She was 82. According to the Padma Puran, she waited 10,000 years. 10,000 years was her wait. Now, 70 years or 10,000 years. She was 82 when the Lord arrived. What we were describing at the beginning of today's presentation, he came, he saw her there. And she was looking with such love and devotion towards the Lord. How did she recognize him? She had always meditated on what her guru had spoken about the Supreme Lord's appearance. And she looked at him, lotus-like eyes. Beautiful. Pearly white teeth. Broad forehead. Curly black hair. Wide chest. That was her meditation, and she saw the Lord embodying all of that. She knew, this is my Supreme Lord. She couldn't move. She couldn't bring herself to come up to the Lord and welcome him to her heart. Why was that? Because she was thinking herself to be completely unqualified. She immediately started remembering that I am from the tribal community. I am a woman, a girl, and I have run away from home. And all that I have here is a hut. This is the Supreme Lord. She couldn't move because she felt that there were so many others that were qualified. At the same time, she was so much desiring to serve the Lord and offer herself at his lotus feet. She had tears running down her eyes. And this predicament that she was in was making her feel so confused. She closed her eyes. Because that is what you do, right? When you're confused, you're like, okay, forget everything. Think. That is what you do. It is a natural, let us say, habit. It is a habit that since most of the information that we receive or that attracts us is through the eyes, when one is confused and one really wants to sort things out, most of us kind of blink our eyes or shut our eyes. Okay. Trying to remember, trying to sort out the confusion. She closed her eyes. And when she opened her eyes, Lord Ramachandra was standing in front of her. Lord Ram had walked up to her. Now she was in double shock. Because he was at a distance and she was completely overwhelmed, and now he is so close. The emotions that she had no place to go. They were kind of running all around her existence. The elation, the happiness was right from her toes to the tip of her hair on the head. There's a constant battle of emotions within her body, seeing the Lord up so close. Wanting to, and suddenly she remembered that he's here. At least welcome him. Bow down to him. And then she remembered that every day she would have a pot of water kept, that when the Lord would come, she would wash his feet. And she's like, he's right here. Where's the pot of water? And feeling so helpless, she kind of hung her head down in shame. And the tears flowed down her eyes onto the lotus feet of the Lord and washed the Lord's lotus feet. What did I do? My tears are on his feet. The Lord is so blissful. He's like, I am feeling the same bliss as Ganga at my lotus feet, as the river Ganges at my lotus feet. What did I do? My tears are on his lotus feet. I have to wipe his lotus feet. I have to wipe them dry. No cloth. Because he's right there in front of her. So she bends down, and with the edge of the cloth, of her sari, of the cloth that she's wearing, with the edge, she was trying to wipe his feet dry. Her hair, her matted hair, cascades down the two sides of her face onto the Lord's lotus feet. And as she's trying to wipe, moving her head back and forth. Do we remember a story from the Bible similarly? This is there in some of the renditions of the Lord's pastimes as Lord Ram. Shabari did that. Her hair was wiping the feet of the Lord dry. All of her preparations couldn't help her, but the service that she did with what was available, that service was top-notch. And then she welcomed the Lord into her hut and offered him those berries. And the Lord accepts them, and we have to stop here. So today is Rama Vijaya Dashmi. The Vijaya Dashmi where Lord Ramachandra got victory. However, the victory that appears in the life of the devotees is as glorious. And this was the victory in the life of Shabari after 70 years of daily sadhana. Shabari never had any mentor to go to, like, today I'm not feeling very enthusiastic in my sadhana. I have gathered one cupful of berries, but I think maybe I should do more. So what do you think? Should I do 16 leaf cups or 64 leaf cups? What would She had no idea of what is being fruitive. She felt blessed to be in the company of great sages, remembering the Lord and waiting in anticipation for the Lord's appearance. So similarly, in Krishna consciousness, that is our aspiration that Srila Prabhupada has. Through his words of wisdom, he has tried to encourage us towards this goal. If we chant the holy names of Krishna sincerely, the Lord is pleased. And if the Lord is pleased, there is no other need that the living entity has in this creation. The Lord's pleasure is completely satisfying for the living entity. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.